news sources. Asia Vision, Asian news through Asian eyes.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to AVN News. I'm your host Malak Ahmad Fayaz, here to bring you the global news that matters. In the next half hour, we'll cover everything from world politics to cultural insights. Stay tuned. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a very productive visit to the US from September 21st to 23rd, 2024. From taking part in Quad Leaders Summit to UN's Summit of the Future and from interacting with thousands of Indian diaspora to meeting with world leaders, it was packed with a lot of meaningful events.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded his historic visit to the United States in a packed tour that lasted around 50 hours. India's vision and engagement was furthered in diverse domains. First, the Quad Leaders Summit. Prime Minister Modi participated in the 6th Quad Leaders Summit in Wilmington, Delaware, hosted by US President Joe Biden. Leaders of Australia and Japan also participated. Some of the big takeaways included the Quad Cancer Moonshot, a groundbreaking partnership to save lives in the Indo-Pacific region by combating cervical cancer. First ever Quad at Sea Ship Observer Mission, cooperation in semiconductor supply chain and more. The next Leader Summit will be hosted by India in 2025. Second, the Summit of the Future. PM Modi addressed saying that global action must match global ambitions. His intervention defined the fundamental course correction needed for a sustainable and equitable future. He flagged the continuing threat of terrorism and cyber crimes, advocated strengthening global digital governance and tech regulation. He also shared India's success in poverty alleviation and digital public infrastructure. Third, the bilateral engagements. On the sidelines of the key events, Prime Minister held a number of bilateral meetings. Besides the Quad partner countries, PM also met leaders of Nepal, Kuwait, Palestine, Vietnam, Armenia and Ukraine. PM Modi and President Zelensky discussed the situation in Ukraine as well as ways to forward on the pursuing a path of peace figured prominently in their discussions. Next, the CEO's Roundtable. Prime Minister Modi interacted with technology industry leaders in New York in a roundtable anchored by Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Talks focused on artificial intelligence, quantum, biotechnology, life sciences, computing, IT and communication, along with semiconductor technologies. Finally, the Mega Diaspora Program. Indian American community accorded a memorable welcome to Prime Minister Modi at the Nassau Coliseum at Long Island. The Prime Minister recounted the remarkable rise of India and the Indian diaspora on the global stage. He also said that for the world, AI stands for artificial intelligence, but he believes it also represents the America-India spirit. So those were some of the key takeaways of Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to the United States. Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
India's PM Narendra Modi met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in New York. He also met Vietnam's President To Lam after the UN Summit of the Future. Early on his 3-day visit, PM Modi had met other leaders and held talks with them to further strengthen bilateral ties between India and the respective countries.
Earlier, US President Joe Biden commended Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic visit to Ukraine last month and his message of peace. PM Modi also held talks with Vietnamese President To Lam in New York after the United Nations Summit of the Future at the UN General Assembly on Sunday. PM Modi congratulated President To Lam on assuming enhanced leadership responsibilities and expressed hope for continued collaboration towards strengthening bilateral ties between India and Vietnam. He also reiterated his sympathies and solidarity with Vietnam in the face of loss and damage caused by Typhoon Yagi earlier this month. President To Lam thanked the Prime Minister for the timely supply of emergency humanitarian assistance and disaster relief by India under Operation Sadbhav.
At his address to the Summit of the Future at the United Nations in New York, India's PM Narendra Modi stressed on how global action must match global ambition and that a reform is needed in global institutions to incorporate the requirements of changing times. He also talked on how India, despite being a developing country, has shown the world that sustainable development is successful.
Global action must match global ambition.
The statement by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi defines the fundamental course correction needed for a sustainable and equitable future. Prime Minister Modi arrived at the 79th UN General Assembly session to address the Summit of the Future in New York. Prime Minister said reforms are the only way forward for global peace and development.
वैश्विक शांति एवं विकास के लिए ग्लोबल संस्थाओं में रिफॉर्म्स आवश्यक है. रिफॉर्म इज द की टू रिलेवेंस.
Apart from reform of multilateral institutions and the global governance architecture, the Prime Minister strongly reiterated India's long-standing position that resolution to global conflicts can only be brought about by engaging in dialogue, sitting across the table and not on the battlefield.
सक्सेस का हमारा यह अनुभव हम ग्लोबल साउथ के साथ साझा करने के लिए तैयार है.
Prime Minister said the world must prioritize a human-centric approach. He flagged the continuing threat of terrorism and cybercrimes and advocated strengthening the global digital governance and tech regulation. He also gave an example of how India successfully lifted 250 million people out of poverty. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address, underlined the key threats and opportunities in the path towards sustainable future. And with its remarkable achievements in poverty alleviation and advances in digital public infrastructure, Prime Minister emphasized that India can show the way. With my colleague Amritpal Singh and camera person Sanjay Jaina, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India at UN headquarters in New York.
President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, said that the United Nations has failed to fulfill its founding mission and has gradually become a dysfunctional structure, adding that international justice cannot be left in the will of 5 privileged member states of the Security Council.
The Turkish president addressed the General Assembly's high-level debate on September 24th in New York. President Erdogan stressed the need for Security Council reform, emphasizing that the world is bigger than 5. On Gaza, the Turkish president called out the council, asking what it was waiting for to prevent the genocide in Gaza, to put a stop to this cruelty, and questioned what the council was waiting for to stop Netanyahu and his network, who is endangering the lives of the Palestinian people, which is a part of a mass murder network. The president stated that the Israeli government is disregarding basic human rights, trampling on international law at every opportunity, and is practicing ethnic cleansing, a clear genocide against a nation, people, and occupying their lands step by step. He continued saying that Palestinians whose freedom, independence, and most basic rights have been usurped are rightfully exercising their legitimate rights of resistance against this occupation and ethnic cleansing. The Turkish president concluded saying that the just resistance of the Palestinian people against the occupiers of their land is too noble and is honorable. The 79th session of the General Assembly high-level debate started on September 24th, kicking off the most high-profile week at UN headquarters in New York. World leaders come together to discuss global issues and highlight their country's specific priorities.
Sri Lanka's first leftist president was sworn in on office, vowing to restore public faith in politics, but said he had no magic solution to the hardships suffered following an unprecedented economic crisis. Self-avowed Marxist Anura Kumara Disanayaka of the People's Liberation Front JVP took his oath at the colonial-era presidential secretariat in Colombo after trouncing his nearest rivals in Saturday's vote. The previously fringe politician whose party led 2 failed uprisings in the island nation that left tens of thousands dead saw a surge of support after the 2022 economic meltdown immiserated millions of ordinary Sri Lankans. Disanayaka, the bearded 55-year-old son of a labourer, was sworn in by Chief Justice Jayanta Jayasuriya in a nationally televised ceremony attended by diplomats, lawmakers and other clergy at the military. A small crowd of JVP supporters gathered outside the Secretariat to celebrate, waving pictures of Disanayaka and the national flag. Disanayaka succeeds outgoing President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who took office at the peak of the financial crisis following the government's first foreign debt default and months of punishing food, fuel and medicine shortages. Wickremesinghe, 75, imposed steep tax hikes and other austerity measures under the terms of an International Monetary Fund (IMF) bailout. His policies ended the shortages and returned the economy to growth, but left millions struggling to make ends meet. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena resigned shortly before the ceremony, clearing the way for Disanayaka to appoint his own cabinet. Disanayaka's party has said he wants to have an interim administration until a fresh parliament is elected. The JVP has only 3 lawmakers in the 225-member legislature. He has softened some policies since his rise to popularity, saying he believes in an open economy and is not totally opposed to privatization. China will lower mortgage rates on existing home loans to a level similar to those of newly issued housing loans, said Pang Gongsheng, governor of the People's Bank of China, PBOC, on Tuesday.
The governor of the PBOC told a press conference that the average reduction in mortgage rates for existing home loans is expected to be around 0.5 percentage points. He said that the new policy is expected to benefit 50 million households, covering a population of 150 million, and lower the total interest expenses for households by approximately 150 billion yuan, about $21.27 billion per year on average, adding that it will help boost consumption and investment and reduce the tendency for early loan repayments or illegal refinancing of existing housing loans to protect the legitimate rights and interests of financial consumers and maintain a stable and healthy order in the real estate market. The minimum down payment ratio for both first and second homes will be unified, with nationwide minimum down payment ratio for second homes to be reduced from 25% to 15%. On May 17th, China announced the establishment of a 300 billion yuan re-lending facility that supports local state-owned enterprises to use those funds to buy commercial homes for affordable housing. Pan said the PBOC will increase its funding proportion in the affordable housing re-lending policy from the original 60% to 100%. He said that previously, when commercial banks issued 10 billion yuan, about $1.42 billion, the People's Bank of China provided 6 billion yuan, about $853 million. Noting that although commercial banks are still using 10 billion yuan, the PBOC is providing 10 billion yuan in low-cost funds, thereby accelerating the inventory reduction process for commercial housing.
Japan, Mongolia agreed to aim for early signing of Defense Cooperation Pact.
Japan's Prime Minister and Mongolian President have agreed to aim for the early signing of a bilateral defense cooperation pact. The two leaders held talks in New York on Sunday. They reaffirmed that maintaining and strengthening a free and open international order based on the rule of law is becoming more important amid deepening conflict and division in the global community. Both leaders agreed to further expand cooperation between the two countries as special strategic partners. They welcome that their government have agreed in principle on the pact concerning the transfer of defense equipment and technology, also agreeing with the aim of signing it at an early date. Referring to North Korea, the two sides confirmed that they will continue to work closely to call on the country to fully abide by the UN Security Council resolutions. Japan's Prime Minister thanked Mongolia for its understanding and cooperation over the issue of North Korea's abductions of Japanese nationals. Mongolia has had friendly ties with North Korea.
In response to the damage caused by recent storms, 32 out of the 40 banks have registered to provide low-interest loans to affected customers, according to the State Bank of Vietnam.
The State Bank of Vietnam stated that 32 out of 40 banks have registered to provide low-interest loans to affected customers following the damage caused by recent storms. These loans total over $16.4 billion, with interest rates reduced by 0.5 to 2%. Some banks are even waiving 50 to 100% of interest payments for customers until the end of the year. Statistics reveal that the banking sector has around $4.7 billion in outstanding loans due to impacts of Typhoon number 3. Significant losses are also reported in some districts.
And with that, we conclude the edition of AVN News. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoy the stories and insights we shared. From all of us here in PSM News, we bid you good night.
Creating a news agenda that reflects an unbiased view of Asian current affairs without relying on external news sources. Asia Vision, Asian news through Asian eyes.